First contact. The Galactic Confederation had existed for 12,000 cycles. Comprised of 37 distinct species from across the Orion Arm, it represented the pinnacle of cooperative civilization. Every member species had overcome the trials of their homeworlds, environments ranging from the caustic acid plains of Vitrex to the crushing gravity wells of Haptoria. They were survivors, apex predators, the undisputed masters of their domains. Until they found Earth. Admiral Zex Talon of the Confederation Exploratory Fleet stood on the observation deck of the inevitable Dominance, his chromatophores pulsing a contemplative blue as he studied the blue-green world on the view screen. 6 outer extremities carefully manipulated the holographic displays while his primary eyes narrowed. "Impossible," he muttered, mandibles clicking in agitation. "Run the atmospheric analysis again." Science Officer Clevra, her crystalline exoskeleton catching the light as she moved, adjusted her instruments. "The readings are consistent, Admiral. Oxygen levels at 21%, nitrogen at 78%, with trace elements. Surface radiation from their star is significant. And you're telling me there's intelligent life here, on this Deathworld. Not just intelligent life, sir. A technological civilization." The bridge fell silent. In the Confederation's long history, they had catalogued millions of worlds. The harshest environments, those classified as death worlds, almost never produced sapient species. When they did, these beings remained primitive, focused entirely on survival. Yet here was Earth, bathed in radiation, its surface ravaged by extreme weather patterns, tectonic shifts, and seasonal fluctuations that would drive most species to extinction. And somehow, incredibly, it had produced a technological civilization. "We will observe them," the Admiral finally declared. "Cloak the fleet. Deploy surveillance drones. I want to understand these humans before we make contact." For 28 rotations, the Confederation studied humanity. What they discovered defied explanation. "They willingly ingest toxins," asked War Marshal Dravkos during the briefing, his armored scales rippling in disbelief. "Yes," replied Clevra. "They call it alcohol and caffeine. Some even deliberately inhale combustible plant matter." "For what purpose?" demanded the Marshal. "Pleasure, apparently." Dravkos's translator glitched as he released a string of untranslatable expletives. "There's more," continued Clevra. "They deliberately expose themselves to environmental extremes. Some climb frozen mountains with minimal protection. Others dive into oceanic trenches. A subset races vehicles at speeds that would liquefy our internal organs upon impact." "Are they insane?" asked Medical Director Folum, her sensory fronds waving in agitation. "No," said Clevra. "They're adaptable. Observe their habitats." The view screen displayed human dwellings from the Arctic Circle to equatorial deserts. They colonized nearly every biome on their world, regardless of temperature, altitude, or available resources. Admiral Zex Talon's exoskeleton creaked as he leaned forward. Most concerning is their fractiousness. Despite achieving spaceflight, they remain divided into competing nation-states. They've weaponized their own atmosphere, developed fusion bombs, and fought wars that have killed millions of their own kind. "Then they're primitives," said Dravkos dismissively. "Dangerous primitives, but primitives nonetheless." "I disagree," said Clevra. "They've mapped their genome, created rudimentary artificial intelligence, and begun serious exploration of their solar system. All within the span of a few centuries. A few centuries." Folum's translator crackled with her surprise. "Most species take millennia to achieve such advancements. Which is why," said Admiral Zex Talon, "the Confederation Council has authorized first contact. We cannot allow such a potentially dangerous species to develop unchecked." The first official meeting between humanity and the Galactic Confederation took place at a remote military installation in what humans called Nevada. Representatives from 17 human nation-states sat across from 5 Confederation delegates, surrounded by recording devices, scientific instruments, and heavily armed guards from both sides. "We welcome you to Earth," said the human designated as Secretary General. "We hope this marks the beginning of peaceful relations between our peoples." Admiral Zex Talon's translator processed the words, but he was more focused on the human's body language. Despite facing creatures that must appear monstrous to them, the humans showed remarkably little fear. Some displayed curiosity, others caution, but none the paralytic terror that most species exhibited upon first contact with radically different life forms. "The Confederation acknowledges your greeting," he replied formally. "We have observed your civilization and wish to understand your development on this challenging world." The diplomatic exchange proceeded with predictable questions about technology, culture, and governance. But it was during an unplanned interruption that Zex Talon gained his first real insight into these strange beings. One of the human security officers suddenly collapsed, his body convulsing. Before the Confederation's medical officer could react, 3 humans rushed to their comrade. One cushioned his head. Another placed a small device in the man's mouth, while the third monitored what appeared to be vital signs on a primitive wrist device. "Epileptic seizure," explained the human doctor after the crisis passed. "He'll be fine. Happens sometimes. You kept him in a security position despite this medical defect?" asked Medical Director Fulham, unable to hide her shock. The human doctor frowned. "It's a condition, not a defect. And yes, with medication, he functions perfectly well 99% of the time. We don't discard people because of medical conditions." This concept, preserving and integrating genetically disadvantaged individuals, was alien to Confederation philosophy, where ruthless efficiency had driven evolution. As the meeting continued, more cultural disconnects emerged. The humans insisted on breaks every few hours for food, water, elimination, and what they called stretching their legs. They made inexplicable sounds they called jokes and expected reaction. Most bizarrely, they repeatedly asked about Confederation art, music, and leisure activities. "Do you not understand?" War Marshal Dravkos finally erupted. "We are apex predators from worlds that would kill you in minutes. We do not engage in frivolous activities." The human Secretary General simply smiled. "Then perhaps that's the biggest difference between us, Marshal. On our Deathworld, as you call it, we've learned that survival isn't enough. We also need joy." 3 days into the diplomatic talks, disaster struck. A fringe human terrorist group, panicked by the alien presence, attacked the facility with a biological agent. Chaos erupted as humans and aliens alike scrambled to contain the threat. "The facility is compromised," reported Security Chief Morosek, his battle carapace already engaging. "The pathogen appears engineered to target carbon-based respiratory systems." "Both ours and theirs," realized Zex Talon with dawning horror. "Seal your exoskeletons. Prepare for emergency extraction." But the humans weren't retreating. Instead, they were organizing. Some donned protective gear and began treating the affected. Others worked frantically at terminals, analyzing the pathogen. The most surprising were those who, despite lacking protection, continued helping both human and alien casualties. "What are they doing?" asked Clevra, watching a human scientist deliberately expose herself to the contaminated air to reach a critical control panel. "They're sacrificing themselves," said Zex Talon, his translator barely able to convey his awe. Within hours, human scientists had identified the pathogen and synthesized a neutralizing agent. Their military contained the attackers. Their medical personnel treated all casualties, alien and human, with equal urgency. When it was over, the human Secretary General, exhausted but resolute, addressed the Confederation delegation. "We regret this incident and understand if you wish to terminate diplomatic relations," she said. "But know this, the actions of these few do not represent humanity. If you give us a chance, we believe our species can contribute meaningfully to your Confederation." Admiral Zex Talon studied the human leader, seeing her in a new light. These creatures, born on a world of constant challenge, had developed something the Confederation, for all its technological superiority, had not: versatility. The Confederation does not abandon potential allies because of obstacles, he replied carefully. However, your species remains an unknown quantity. Before we can consider your inclusion in the galactic community, you must be tested. Tested how? Asked the Secretary General. The trial of the 7 spheres, announced War Marshal Dravkos, his posture rigid with tradition. A challenge all potential Confederation members must face. And what does this trial entail? Admiral Zextalan's chromatophores flickered with complex emotions as he responded. It tests all aspects of sentient capability, physical prowess, technological innovation, cognitive processing, social cohesion, adaptive potential, moral reasoning, and something your language might call spirit. And if we refuse, then we classify your species as a potential threat and implement appropriate containment protocols. The human representatives conferred briefly before the Secretary General turned back to face them. What she said next would later be recorded in the Confederation archives as the moment everything changed. We accept your challenge, she said, her voice steady. Not because we fear containment, but because humans have never backed down from a challenge. It's not in our nature. Admiral Zextalan felt an unfamiliar sensation ripple through his neural network, something approaching respect, mixed with the first tendrils of genuine concern. Very well, he said. The trial begins in one orbital cycle of your world. Prepare yourselves. As the Confederation delegation returned to their vessels, Science Officer Clevere approached the Admiral privately. Sir, our preliminary assessments of human capabilities may have been conservative. Explain. During the crisis, I observed humans operating far beyond their baseline physiological parameters. Strength, endurance, cognitive processing, all enhanced by what they call adrenaline, and their problem-solving methodology is chaotic but effective. The Admiral considered this. You believe they might actually succeed in the trial. I believe, Admiral, that we may have finally encountered a species that evolved on a world more challenging than our own, and if their adaptations reflect that environment. She didn't finish the thought. She didn't need to. For the first time in his long career, Admiral Zextalan felt uncertainty about the future of the Confederation. Because if these humans, these soft, fragile-looking creatures born on a radiation-soaked rock, could survive the trial of the 7 spheres, everything the Confederation believed about their place in the galaxy would change. Forever. The challenge. 1 Earth month after first contact, humanity stood ready for the trial of the 7 spheres. The Confederation had converted an uninhabited moon in the outer solar system into a testing ground, their advanced technology reshaping the barren rock into 7 distinct environments. Commander Maya Chen, former Special Forces operative and now humanity's designated champion, studied the holographic representation of the trial zones with narrowed eyes. 6 other humans, a physicist, an engineer, a diplomat, a doctor, a pilot, and a philosopher, completed the team selected to represent Earth. They've designed this to break us, she said quietly. Theoretical physicist Dr. Elijah Okafor nodded. Each sphere appears calibrated to the physiological limits of different Confederation species. The gravity in Sphere 2 is 3 times Earth normal, and the atmospheric pressure in Sphere 4 would crush most human diving equipment, added Dr. Sarah Kamal, the team's medical expert. Maya's gaze moved to the holographic representations of their alien observers. Admiral Zextalan's insectoid form towered over War Marshal Dravkos' reptilian bulk. The crystalline science officer, Clevere, stood apart, her translucent form refracting light. They expect us to fail, Maya said. Let's disappoint them. The trial began at Earth dawn. The human team was transported to the starting chamber, a stark metallic sphere with 7 doorways, each pulsing with a different colored light. Admiral Zextalan's voice echoed through hidden speakers. The trial of the 7 spheres tests all qualities the Confederation deems necessary for advanced civilization. You may attempt the spheres in any order. You may use any tools or weapons you brought with you. You have 1 standard rotation to complete all 7 trials or face elimination. Elimination sounds ominous, muttered Raj Patel, the team's engineer. Just diplomatic jargon for go home and stay there, replied Ambassador Lai Wei, adjusting his formal attire. Let's not find out. Commander Chen assessed the doorways, then pointed to the one glowing with fierce red light. We start with the physical challenge. Play to our strengths first. The team stepped through into blistering heat. Sphere 1 was a combat arena, its floor shifting between sand, stone, and metal grating. At the center stood 3 Confederation warriors, an 8-limbed Vitruxi, a hulking Norgalian, and a sinuous, quicksilver phage. To pass this sphere, announced the Vitruxi, you must defeat one of us in single combat or survive against all 3 for the duration of 500 heartbeats. Maya stepped forward without hesitation. I choose single combat against the phage. The aliens seemed surprised by her choice. The phage was the most lethal of the 3, capable of reshaping its form into razor-sharp appendages. An interesting choice, said the phage, its voice a metallic whisper. Few choose me. We did our homework, Maya replied. She stripped off her outer uniform, revealing light combat armor underneath. Your species relies on intimidation and speed, but you overheat easily. The phage's surface rippled, perhaps in amusement or concern. Begin. What followed was a dance of death. The phage moved like liquid mercury, its limbs elongating into spears and blades that should have skewered the human instantly. But Maya was never where the strikes landed. She dodged, rolled, and feinted with uncanny precision, leading the phage on a punishing chase around the superheated arena. 3 minutes in, the phage's movements began to slow. 4 minutes, and its strikes became predictable. At precisely 5 minutes, Maya launched her counterattack, a series of precisely aimed blows with a composite baton that disrupted the alien's molecular cohesion. The phage collapsed into a quivering puddle. Yield, it gasped. You understood my weakness. Maya nodded respectfully. Good fight. The doorway to the next sphere glowed green. Team Earth had passed the first test. Sphere 2, Endurance, announced War Marshal Dravkos, traversed the gravity labyrinth and retrieved the beacon. The increased gravity hit them like a physical blow as they entered, 3 times Earth normal, just as Dr. Okafor had predicted. Moving became an exercise in pain, each step requiring tremendous effort. Exoskeletons, ordered Maya. Raj and Dr. Kamal helped the team don lightweight mechanical assistance frames, not powerful enough to completely counteract the gravity, but sufficient to make movement possible. We'll take shifts, Maya continued. 2 advance while 5 rest. Rotate every 50 meters. The aliens observed with increasing interest as the humans methodically worked their way through the labyrinth. Other species typically attempted to power through with brute strength, often failing as exhaustion set in. The humans' approach was different, strategic, cooperative, conserving energy through rotation. When they reached the central chamber and retrieved the beacon, a pulsing crystalline object, Admiral Zex Talon's voice held a note of surprise. Sphere 2, complete. Proceed to Sphere 3. The third sphere presented a cognitive challenge, a vast room containing an alien machine of bewildering complexity. Thousands of components moved in patterns that seemed random, occasionally producing musical tones or flashes of light. Decipher the machine's purpose and optimize its function, instructed Science Officer Clevra. Dr. Okafor and Raj took the lead, circling the machine cautiously. It's a computational device, Raj said after several minutes of observation, but using principles I haven't seen before. Not computation, corrected Dr. Okafor, his eyes tracking the movement patterns. Communication. It's a quantum entanglement communicator. For 2 hours they worked, taking measurements, tracing energy flows, documenting patterns. The rest of the team assisted, suggesting alternative approaches when the scientists hit roadblocks. Finally, Dr. Okafor made a decisive adjustment to 7 key components. The machine hummed, its chaotic movements resolving into harmonious patterns. A clear tone rang out, and a holographic display materialized, showing what appeared to be a star chart. "Fascinating," said Clevra, entering the chamber. "Most species attempt to reverse engineer the device component by component. You observe the system holistically. Sometimes you need to step back to see the pattern," replied Dr. Okafor with a modest shrug. Spheres 4 through 6 tested other aspects of human capability. The pressure chamber of Sphere 4 required the team to repair a damaged underwater habitat while subjected to crushing depths. Sphere 5 presented a diplomatic simulation, forcing Ambassador Lai to negotiate peace between species with seemingly irreconcilable differences. Sphere 6 was a moral labyrinth, presenting increasingly difficult ethical dilemmas that tested the team's philosophical frameworks. To the growing amazement of the Confederation observers, the humans passed each test, not always with elegance, often with heated debates among themselves, but invariably finding solutions that worked. "They argue constantly," noted War Marshal Dravkos, watching the humans dispute approaches to a problem in Sphere 6. "Such internal division should be weakness. Yet they consistently reach consensus and execute effectively," replied Admiral Zextalon. "Perhaps their disagreement is functional." By the time they reached Sphere 7, the final test, the human team was exhausted, battered, and running short on supplies. Yet their determination remained undiminished. They stepped through the doorway and found nothing. An empty white room, featureless and silent. "What's the challenge?" asked Maya, turning slowly. No answer came. Minutes passed. Then hours. "It's a waiting game," suggested Professor Jackson, the philosopher, "testing our patience." But as another hour passed with no change, the team began to question this theory. "What if," began Dr. Kamal slowly, "what if there is no challenge?" Maya frowned. "There's always a challenge." "No," insisted Dr. Kamal. "Look at what they've tested so far. Combat, endurance, intelligence, teamwork, diplomacy, ethics. What's left?" Professor Jackson's eyes widened. "Creativity, imagination." Maya considered this, then nodded decisively. "If there's no challenge provided, we create one. Raj, what can you build with what we have left?" From the remaining supplies, Raj constructed a simple transmitter. Dr. Okafor calculated the frequency most likely to be detected by Confederation systems. Ambassador Lai composed a message, not a plea for help, but a formal invitation to join them in the empty sphere. When the door finally opened again, Admiral Zextalon entered alone. "Explain your actions," he demanded. Maya stepped forward. "The final test wasn't about solving a problem you created. It was about what we would do in the absence of external direction. And you chose to reach out," observed the Admiral. "Why?" "Because that's what humans do," said Professor Jackson. "We explore, we connect. When faced with the unknown, we seek to understand it, not merely survive it." For a long moment, Admiral Zextalon was silent, his alien features unreadable. Then, surprisingly, his chromatophores shifted to a color the humans had never seen him display, a deep royal purple. "The trial of the 7 spheres is complete," he announced formally. "For the first time, in 8,000 cycles, all challenges have been passed. The Confederation acknowledges humanity's qualification for membership." The human team exchanged glances of relief and pride, but Ambassador Lai stepped forward with characteristic diplomatic caution. "We are honored by your assessment, Admiral. However, before we accept this membership, we would request clarification on several matters of governance and autonomy." A sound emerged from the Admiral that the translators struggled to interpret, something between amusement and respect. "Already negotiating," he said. Most species are so grateful for inclusion that they accept our terms without question. Humans, said Maya with a slight smile, tend to ask questions. 3 months later, humanity entered the Galactic Confederation under terms that had required substantial revisions to protocols untouched for millennia. Earth remained sovereign, but gained access to Confederation technology, trade networks, and protection. In exchange, humans would serve as consultants on problems that had stymied the Confederation's best minds. On the observation deck of the inevitable Dominance, now orbiting Earth as part of a joint defense fleet, Admirals X Talon and Science Officer Clevra watched a shuttle depart for the planet below. The Council remains divided on the wisdom of this arrangement, noted Clevra. Many fear that humanity's chaotic nature will disrupt Confederation stability. Change was inevitable, replied the Admiral. We have grown stagnant, perfecting what we know rather than exploring what we don't. And these humans. Admiral X Talon's gaze remained fixed on the blue-green world turning slowly beneath them, a world that had produced beings who could climb frozen mountains for recreation, compose music that moved emotions across species barriers, and faced the unknown with curiosity rather than fear. These humans, he said quietly, evolved on a world that tried to kill them daily. Rather than merely surviving, they learned to thrive. They turned their greatest vulnerability, their adaptability, into their greatest strength. His chromatophores pulsed with complex patterns as he continued. The Confederation has always believed that the harshest worlds produce the strongest species. We were right, just not in the way we expected. Science Officer Clever's crystalline form caught the light of Earth's sun as she turned to face her commander. You believe they will change us. It wasn't a question. They already have, replied Admiral X Talon. And perhaps that is exactly what we needed. As the flagship of the Confederation's mightiest fleet orbited a world they had once dismissed as a hostile backwater, a new chapter in galactic history began. One where the definition of strength expanded to include not just the ability to dominate, but the wisdom to cooperate, the courage to question, and the audacity to imagine. The Deathworld species had met humanity, and nothing would ever be the same again.